Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of ET Brand Equity's Masters of CX, where we try to delve into the minds of industry leaders and innovators who are shaping the landscape of customer experience. Today, we have a special guest in the driver's seat, Mr. Nalinikant Golagunta, the CEO of Mahindra and Mahindra's automotive division. Mr. Golagunta is here to share how Mahindra Auto is steering the customer experience on the road of innovation. Hello, Mr. Golagunta. Great to have you here.
Thank you, Ojasvi. Delighted to be here.
Well, let's start the conversation with the customer-centric vibes. So, how does Mahindra and Mahindra Auto keep the cool factor alive by understanding and meeting customer needs? Any unique touch you can spill? And I mean, how you have embraced a customer-centric philosophy within your automotive division?
So, just a few insights I would say. If you look at the industry itself, has evolved tremendously over the last 10 years or so. One of the major dimensions is the introduction of digital format in the whole decision journey itself and the purchase journey of customers. So our ability to stay engaged with the customer constantly as they go through the entire decision journey as well as the purchase journey is very important for us, right? And therefore, in that we use unique methods like one is obviously tracking them on the websites and working with them very closely, but also making sure that we are able to keep their engagement going when they physically show up at our dealerships, having innovations like using WhatsApp for scheduling test drives, for example. So there's several innovations we have so that we are able to engage and stay on track with the customer as they make the transition seamlessly between a physical part of the decision journey and the digital part of the decision journey as well. So that's something we have done over the last 3 launches. Obviously, you've seen the results of that, the 700, the Thar, as well as the Scorpio and to that extent. But on a broader basis also, the entire marketing team, the entire product planning team is constantly looking at how the overall consumer lifestyles are changing as well, right? And one of the insights we got early on was with the kind of extended commutes people have on their way to work, on the way back, really a way for them to recreate what an experience, an entertainment experience would look like at home. Can you recreate that in the car is one of the insights we got as well, right? So how do you bring tech and everything to enable that is one example of what a lifestyle choice we have to make as well.
Okay, thank you for dishing out the details. But you were speaking about tech. So now tech-wise, Mahindra and Mahindra is like the Tony Stark of cars. So how do you make sure that AI, IoT, and connectivity in your vehicles don't feel like rocket science, but actually enhance customers' driving joy?
Yeah, that's a great question. So there's a tendency when you have a lot of technology to come in to make it extremely complicated. And so for us, the philosophy is fairly simple. We want to democratize technology and make it accessible at the fingertips of our customers, right? So democratizing advanced technology to a point where it's almost transparent to the customer and they don't feel like there's some technology enabling it. That's the philosophy with which we develop. So there's a ton of work which our team in MRV, which is our Mahindra Research Valley in Chennai, does to look at the UX and the UI and benchmark with the best in class, not just in the auto industry, but across the board. Because in our minds, these vehicles are starting to evolve to be almost like an electronic gizmo on wheels. Software on wheels is a word they use, but to us, that's what it looks like. And therefore, if you take that perspective and look at it, you want to get the best technology like an iPhone has, but the reality is you want to do it in such a way that it looks seamless and it works perfectly well, even for a novice for technology, right? So that's the philosophy we work with.
Okay, and now speaking about the electric cars, of course, the rebels of automotive scene. So how's Mahindra Auto using tech to make owning an electric vehicle less where's the next charging station and more like a wow, I couldn't love this experience any less. So how are you leveraging technology to enhance the user experience for electric vehicle owners, addressing concerns such as charging infrastructure and range anxiety?
Yeah, so it's the same kind of technology we've used in 700 as well, and which is how do you use telematics? How do you use software from outside the automobile industry to be able to bring it in? For example, we have the BlueSense app, which we use, where you're able to figure out where is the closest charging station that you have. So the range anxiety is something which can take care because at any point in time, you have a general sense on where your next charging station could look like. That's one example. But now I'm going to step back and talk a little bit about the vehicle itself, right? So technology is one which is customer facing, but there's a lot of technology which goes into the vehicle and the design of the vehicle to make sure that you're solving for some of these things, right? So if you use AI, for example, in doing a computer modeling or computer simulations to get a vehicle to be a lot more aerodynamic, you're solving some of the range problems. Some of the technology which goes into how do we do our battery charging, what is the technology we use there, what are the optimization algorithms we use there as well, right? So these are things which don't necessarily show up to a customer as the nitty-gritties of it, but there's an experience which comes out of it which works for it as well.
Okay, and Nell, elaborating on the telematics point, which is also a superhero of car health. So, how's Mahindra and Mahindra Auto using it to swoop in and save day for the customer rides? Like any stories of any car getting a health check before we even notice? How do you use telematics to provide proactive customer support?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. So telematics, if you look at it, there's a ton of things it can do for you. The reality is you ought to make sure very clear on what outcomes you want to drive. And for us, there's a few things we are trying to look at. One is obviously monitoring, real-time health monitoring, and therefore you're able to prevent breakdowns from happening. The second piece is, can you use this to deliver safety outcomes for the customer as well? That's an important piece as well we are driving. So I'll give you an example from a health monitoring perspective. If you have any TPMS solutions you have for these cars on the wheels, that gives you a sense, not just in terms of getting you better range in electric vehicles. We talked about this earlier as well, but also it is a safety concern sometimes. If you have a vehicle, you're going on a long ride and you have an ability to do TPMS and instantly it shows up not just on the vehicle, but it shows up on the app also, right? So you may not be driving the car. It might be some family member who's driving the car. So that element of it which comes in as well. The second one I would give you an example is safety belt alerts, right? I, for example, have a chauffeur who drives my car. He might be taking my child somewhere. And if I know that the car is being driven without the belts being worn, and it shows up on my app. So I may not be in the car, and that's where the telematics piece comes in as well. So this gives you some level of safety and security, which goes without saying that as well. I think the second piece of it you mentioned is on an ongoing basis with BS 6.2, for example, showing DEF alerts on the diesel vehicles. So there are a few other things we do that's more operational, but again, helps you ensure that the vehicle is in running condition and you make sure that you're not causing any damage to the vehicle. There's some of those pieces we're working through on telematics as well.
Okay, and how does data play a role in all of these things? Like there's data everywhere. So how are you using the flood of data from connected cars to make the ride as personalized as a playlist on a road trip? How are you doing that?
So there are a few things we need to think through. I think, like you said, there's a glut of data which comes in. We have to be careful on a few things. There's obviously data privacy. We have to watch that. I'll keep that umbrella out there. So we have to think through this a little bit. So there's data which gets generated, which we can use to create insights for the customers. And we talked a little bit about that, the TPMS data, the DEF indicator data, the safety alert data. And there's data which we are able to take with obviously approval from the customers, which at an aggregate anonymized level, we are able to see what kind of riding patterns are happening, right? What kind of modes are being used, what features are being used. And therefore, it gives us an ability to see how the customer is actually experiencing the vehicle overall, right? And so that piece of it is quite interesting. And that's the closed loop we have with our product development team, with our product planning team, to say that if you put out 15 different things, what are some of the features which are getting used? What are some of the elements which are being used a lot more than the rest of it as well? So our Adrenox system is a classic example of that on the 7W. Where we
Interesting.
are able to figure out the different features overall.
Okay. So and now like before wrapping it up all, so tell us how do you keep the customer centric groove going? Like give us a backstage pass to company culture that's all about keeping us grinning behind the wheel. So what is happening? How does the customer feedback mechanism actually work for you?
Yeah. So a couple of things. One, customer feedback for us, like I said earlier, when we started the conversation, happens all the way through the journey. It starts with when we are thinking and conceptualizing a new car. What are the things which the customer is expecting today? What are they seeing in other benchmark vehicles? And what are the retail experiences, digital experiences they're having? So that's one place where we start. Second is, as we get closer to the finishing up the car, we start to involve prosumers in the journey. But one of the other things we have done uniquely is these days, we are starting to get families involved in the jury as well, right? And one of the insights we've gotten is the car decision-making journey is no longer one single person making a journey. It's actually a family which comes together who's starting to make a journey. So we use family juries where we get an entire family to experience the vehicle and give feedback as well, right? So that's another piece where we're getting customer feedback. And the third piece of it is once the car is bought and the ownership experience looks like, then we are constantly monitoring, which we talked about as well, right? These are some of the pieces we are using so that the insight is not coming at one single point in the journey, but it's happening across the board. And obviously, we're very fortunate to have a passionate set of team members here who are constantly in touch with the customer digitally as well as physically to be able to get that feedback as well. So that's the process we follow. And at the end of the day, the philosophy here is if your family was riding the vehicle, how would you want them to experience the product? So you take it very personally from that thing, and then that helps us. We are that much more passionate in creating the journey for the customer.
That's very interesting, and thank you so much for the insights. I guess that's it. A huge thanks to Nell, Mr. Nalinikant Golagunta, for giving us a ticket to the Mahindra & Mahindra Innovation Show. Hope to have more interesting conversations soon. Thank you so much, Nell.
Thank you, Ojasvi. Pleasure having me.
Thank you so much.